The Filmmaker, Part 1, The Moment. I had no idea who she was. As a filmmaker, unusual reactions to works you've created are common. When I got the first message, I decided to delete it and forget about it. I felt it wasn't worth my attention. I never thought it would have any consequences, and I thought it might even be a joke. When the second message was left on my home voicemail, I began to feel slightly worried. The first message had been brief and restrained. She said something like, "I saw your film. I can't stop thinking about it. The ending, in the desert, it's wrong." Then she hung up. Again, this seemed trivial at the time, maybe a joke left by someone who knew reactions the film had gotten. But the second message was much more aggressive. There was a pause, and then, quietly, she said, "I watched it again. I mean it, this ending. Who the fuck do you think you are?" I listened to the message several times to decide if I recognized anything about the voice. Aside from the anger, it was smooth and relaxed. There was a barely noticeable Hispanic accent. She seemed mature but not old, maybe in her 40s. It was an intelligent voice and showed confidence. She had a copy of the film, or claimed to, which meant she probably had some connection to the film, to someone I knew or to the independent film community. I searched my mind for anyone who might leave such a message. Was it a disgruntled actor or technician who had worked on the film? A friend who was angry with me? No, I couldn't believe that. I thought about it for a couple of days, went through various possibilities, listened again and again to the message, and eventually felt certain that I didn't know her. Hello? Hello. My name is Karen. I left some messages a few days ago, and I'm calling to apologize. You're the person who left the messages about the film? Yes, and I'm sorry, I was just upset. Why? Because someone I love disappeared just like it happens in the film. I didn't know what to say or if I should believe her. She sounded sincere and even seemed a little intimidated. Well, I don't see what it has to do with me or the film, so I think I'm really sorry. I hesitated. All right. I was working for a festival and saw the film and got upset. What festival? The one in Las Vegas last year. I was volunteering and kept a copy. I watched it again this week. I thought it might help me. Again, I wasn't sure what to say, but I began to feel she might be telling the truth. Well, I'm sorry the film upset you. Thank you, but it's not your fault. I know that. It was just similar. You know someone who disappeared? Yes, my sister. I'm sorry. Thank you. There was an awkward pause. Well, I should go. I read that you're screening the film again next week, here in Las Vegas. That's right. At the university? Yes. I was wondering if I could meet you. Well, considering what you've told me, I don't think that's a good idea. No, I'm all right now. I'm sorry about the calls. Would you mind if I stopped by and said hello? I don't think you should watch the film again if it's upsetting you. No, it just surprised me, and I could just stop by for the discussion afterwards. I'm interested. I work with photography. Would that be all right? I don't know that I'll have a lot of time. Of course, I know. I'll just come to the discussion, and if you don't have time afterwards, that's fine. She apologized one more time and said she'd see me after the screening. I hung up the phone and immediately felt that I might have made a serious mistake. I probably should have told her not to come. What if she caused a problem? On the other hand, if the story she told about her sister was true, maybe I had a responsibility to meet with her. Maybe, like she said, she had simply been upset. She seemed normal enough. Still, her messages had a strange intensity that I couldn't forget. As the film played, I stood in the back of the auditorium, watched the audience, and waited. I thought Karen might have decided to watch the film again, so I looked for any unusual reactions in the crowd. There were about 75 people and maybe 30 women, but none of them did anything that seemed out of the ordinary. All watched quietly and sometimes shifted in their seats. One woman got up, left the room, and then returned a few minutes later. It was a screening, like any other. After the screening was over, my friend, a teacher who had invited me to show the film, introduced me to the audience, and I answered various questions. As I did, I watched the auditorium to see if anyone came in or out. I thought maybe Karen had waited in the lobby while the film was playing and would come inside for the Q&A, but no one entered. When the questions were over, a few people approached me and made comments about the film. A couple of them were women, but neither introduced themselves as Karen. When all of the audience left, I talked with my friend for a few minutes. We discussed the film and various reactions people had given. I thanked him for inviting me. Also, I had mentioned the situation with Karen, and I let him know that, as far as I could tell, she hadn't come. We went into the lobby, talked a few more minutes about his current work and about when we'd see each other next, then said goodnight. I walked out into the parking lot. It was a surprisingly cold night and a strong wind was coming off the desert. I got into my rental car and drove back toward Bally's. As I drove, I thought about Karen. I had to admit that I felt disappointed that she hadn't come to the screening. I'd been worried about her causing some kind of problem, but I was also interested to see what kind of person she was. Would she seem normal? Would she be younger or older than I expected? Would I believe her? But there was something stronger to my feelings than just curiosity. Whether she was telling the truth or not, of all the reactions that I had gotten to the film, hers seemed the most important. I reached the hotel, dropped my car off with the valet, and went inside. The lobby was crowded, but I barely noticed the people or the casino. I felt anxious and hurried to my room. When I got there, I had a drink and tried to get Karen out of my mind. I took out some work and tried to concentrate on it, but couldn't. I had another drink, watched some TV, and eventually fell asleep. I was awakened by a telephone ringing. I looked at the digital clock. It was 1 a.m. Hello? Hi. It's Karen. What? It's Karen. I know it's late. I wasn't able to get there tonight. How did you know where I'm staying? I'm downstairs in the bar. Do you want to come down? I can explain. Look, I don't know you. If we could just talk, it would help. I was still partly asleep and even thought I might be dreaming this. I looked at the clock again and wasn't sure what to do. Whatever she wanted, this seemed like the only way to resolve it. All right, I'll be down in a minute. I got dressed and left the room. It was a weekday night, but the hotel was busy with some sort of convention. 2 couples got on the elevator with me. They looked like they were just now going out. On the way down, a few other people got on the elevator and were laughing and making jokes and talking about the convention. We reached the lobby and I walked toward the bar. The casino was busy and filled with sounds from video slot machines, players shouting and laughing, music on the intercom, etc. I reached the bar, called Indigo, and went inside. The dimly lit room was crowded with people sitting at small tables, drinking and having snacks. Candles were on each table and the chairs had dark blue upholstery. In the back corner of the room, I saw a woman sitting alone at a table. She was about 35, wore a black dress, and had long dark hair. My first impression was that she was unusually beautiful, but also suffering in some way. She seemed outside of the situation and somehow out of place, like she wasn't fully aware of what was going on around her, or if she was, like she didn't care. She looked at me and raised her hand. I walked over to her. She stood up, shook my hand, and said hello. Hello. Thank you for meeting me. She gestured for me to sit down. As I did, a waitress immediately approached and asked if I wanted anything to drink. I placed an order and the waitress went to the bar. Karen looked at me without saying anything. Her gaze was extremely direct, as though she were making a decision about me. I already felt irritable and the way she was acting just made it worse. So, Karen? That's right. Am I going to keep getting strange calls from you? She smiled for the first time. No, I'm sorry about that, but it keeps happening. She just nodded and looked at me. Her gaze made me slightly nervous, but I returned it. Her eyes, which were deep brown and fairly large, seemed sensitive and intelligent. I waited a moment and then continued. What did you want to talk about? The waitress returned with my drink, and Karen took a sip from her glass of wine. After the waitress left, there was another pause. Why did you make the film? Maybe we should talk about you and why you're so interested in it. You said talking might help you. Yes. I waited. She looked around the room and then turned back to me. Would you mind if I told you something? Something that I don't fully understand yet. About why the film upset you? Yes. All right. She hesitated slightly and then began.